sorry about last week. Don't know what happened there. Somehow Tom got control. That will never happen again. Do not worry. I am back. My name is Jay Eggman. This is episode 23 of the Opinion Zone podcast. I'm joined by actually quite a varied bunch today. Usually we have Fuad, Poxxy, Donnie and Tom. Unfortunately, the only one of those that's here today is Tom. Never mind. Hello Tom. You alright? You recovering from last week?
Never let me host a show again. Okay?
No, don't worry. Never going to happen again.
I'll do any part, just never let me host it.
I'm joined by a variety of different people today. Unfortunately, Fuad is unavailable due to him collecting things and being Canadian. So I have searched my Canadian database and I found the wonderful Let's Player Amiibo hoarder. Tanner.
Yeah, I'm not even going to deny the hoarding part. I'm really not. It's getting to a point where I come back home every week and there's 3 or 4 new ones. And I'm just like, oh, hey, they're here. My mom's like, where are you getting this money from? And I tell her YouTube. And then she's like, you're in university. Why aren't you using that for books? And no, it's terrible. But hi, I'm back.
Hello.
I'm replacing food.
Unfortunately, also, we do not have a Uncle Poxxy. But don't worry, because I went through my miserable old Git database. And I found Pete, also known as Titan's Creed.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, welcome back. You're probably like one of our repeat visitors. This is like your 3rd appearance, I think, or possibly 4th, because you've done at least 2.
I've done at least one other Opinion Zone in recent memory.
You've done one with the recent one, and you've done one back in a very early episode. Yeah.
Way back in the day.
So you're like almost a regular in your regularness. And we have a guest from the wonderful world. Actually, not wonderful because they've never said anything nice about me. But from the world of Sonic Retro, a lovely place which has commented only nice things about videos we've made, and probably one of my favourite writers on the website. We have David the Lurker.
Hello. That's me. I'm David the Lurker. I'm an administrator on Sonic Retro. How are you?
If you
now we
know,
wait for their answer.
If you want to know who wrote the review for Return to the Little Planet 2, here he is. His Twitter will be in the description. You can send hate that way. Now, today we are discussing one of the most treasured not franchises, but comic series ever. One that has been discussed to death, despite not actually publishing really anything yet. Despite apparently movie being in the works and talks, because we're going to discuss the wonderful world of Ken Penders.
Oh,
no. Here we go.
It's definitely wonderful.
It is a wonderful world. He obviously started in the world of Archie, has moved on, had a slight bit of a hiccup with the legal rights of characters. I don't even know where to begin. It's just he's such an overwhelming
twat.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could always start back in 1993 when what did he do? Right, because his kid was into Sonic.
Yes.
And now I can't remember who whoever was in the editor at the time. I should know this because I've thought about it so often, where he was basically asked, hey, do you know anything about Sonic? We're working on this comic. We've got no idea what we're doing. And he was just like, oh, well, my kid likes Sonic. And that's basically how he got into the world of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Archie book. He wasn't there from the beginning, but he was pretty early. His first published work was in issue 9 and that was The Good, the Bad, and the Hedgehog, when he introduced Evil Sonic and the concept of alternate zones being parallel universes traversed through the cosmic interstate.
Wasn't this when they also introduced Sonic?
Oh,
The
that
time
was
cop?
way later, but I mean,
Oh.
it's the same concept because he took that idea, then he made a sequel in issue 17, which involved the Borg hand and Robo Robotnik and introducing all of that.
Yeah.
And then way later on, the idea of Sonic came about, but Ken didn't actually create Sonic, but it did fit into the mythology that he was creating over time. So,
He basically was the ultimate fanfic writer.
you could say that because he started work on other licensed properties. He drew a few issues of Star Trek and the Next Generation that was being published at DC. He did some work on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. back when that show wasn't on the air and nobody, I guess, really cared about it at the time. But because I mean, nowadays,
amazing.
yeah,
Man from U.N.C.L.E. was amazing.
because I mean, nowadays there are so many licensed comics based on old shows, but at the time, I think it just flew under the radar. But yeah, I mean, Sonic, that was his bread and butter, and he's said a lot about it over the years.
So I don't. Well, what is he doing? I mean, so obviously he eventually left and moved on. Do you think when you create these things for another
left?
Well, it's sort of like the reasons he left are kind of fuzzy because like after Carl Ballers left the book, which I'm not sure if he walked away or if he was fired, but they gave the book back to Ken. The sales did bump up a little bit, but when they decided to go in a different direction because they got a new editor and they brought in Ian Flynn, at first they were like, well, Ken, you can still work on it as like an artist and an inker, and I think it's either 168 or 169 where he does ink like a backup story, but he says that what he wanted to do he wasn't able to do anymore, so he walked away on his own.
So when they took creative control away from him, basically, this is what you're saying.
Yeah, because he had this whole outline of what he wanted to do, like up to issue 200, although he only revealed up to 175 exactly what he was going to do. But, I mean, when Ian came in and just completely changed everything...
For the better.
Yeah, because he was supposed to finish Mobius 25 years later in a two-parter, and then Ian ended up writing those issues, but I guess what Ken wanted to do and what the editor said that he should do, they butted heads because the editor really wanted Shadow to be part of the story, and that's why it suddenly shifts over to this whole King Shadow business, which was not part of Ken's original outline. Ken didn't want to put Shadow in it because he felt it didn't add to what the story he was trying to tell was, and since he had no control over that, he just walked away because he used to have a lot of freedom, not just from the people who were the editors and other writers, but even Sega was just like, oh, we don't care what you do as long as you don't make Sonic cry. Like, that was the biggest thing. They didn't want Sonic to cry because it didn't look cool. And that was as much issue as Ken had for the longest time about what he really wanted to do on that book. So,
just quickly bring it up on... No, you first.
Doesn't Sonic cry when he break up with Sally or something? Like, I'm pretty sure that there's things of Sonic crying in the Archie.
Well, in the later 130s, I think they kind of lessened what they could show. But even Tracy Yardley, I think, yeah. When he drew those two issues of Mobius 25 years later, there was a scene where Sonic is crying because he realizes that his marriage never happened and his kids were never born. Originally, he drew really large tears and oh, you're really upset. But Sega said, oh, you got to tone that back. So back during the golden age of Ken Penders' tenure, around issue 50, there were scenes where Sonic was drawn and he was supposed to look upset or there was supposed to be some form of tears. But Sega said, no, you need to change that. So instead, Sonic just looks tired or bored, but he's supposed to look sad. So over time, they kind of loosened up on it, but not as much as Ken wanted to do. And I mean, at that point, Ken wasn't writing the main story. He was focusing on the future stuff, which is, of course, what ties into the Lara-Su Chronicles.
So, do you think he had a right to those characters that he...
No.
No.
See, I want to say no, and I kind of want to say no, yeah.
In all fairness, I mean, don't get me wrong. I understand if he created the characters and such, then technically, by default, he has creative right over set characters. But
But he didn't
he's
create
creating
them
characters
independently. He created them under this thing that isn't his.
He doesn't
And
have,
And it's not like
he,
he look.
he doesn't have rights to the original characters. I mean, spinning round to what Jay said earlier on about him being a fanfic writer, isn't that what a lot of comic book work realistically is these days? Is
Yeah.
just all fanfic writing. So here's something else. I mean, if Ken Penders was still editor and had all the creative control and Ian Flynn didn't come in, do you reckon he would have just brought in the Lara-Su into the official Archie world, just as a side story, and just kept it going that way?
possibly because of the whole Sonic Universe thing that's been going on for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Because literally since Archie's gone on with the Sonic Universe, each 4 chapters has kind of just been like a mini arc, which at first was in different sections and different stories entirely, are now starting to converge into one. Like, this happened at this time, and so on and so forth. So the idea of Penders potentially, if he was still creative, had creative control, doing that with the Lara-Su Chronicles is very likely could have been the case.
Yeah, I mean, he wrote Mobius 25 years later as a backup strip. It was in 14 issues, starting like what was it, 131 to 144, I believe. It's been a little while. I did write 50,000 words on the subject, but
No, I read them all.
oh yeah, that was something. But yeah, I think because he had introduced the concept a couple years before, and he had stated that in his mind, like, the story of Sonic and the Robotnik Wars and all of that was done in his head, and he was really more interested in seeing what happened in the future. So Lara, I think Mobius, because the original idea of Knuckles 20 years later was just supposed to be a 48-page special, and probably not even run the whole 48 pages. But he thought about it more and more, and the way that it ended abruptly under his pen, I think that he would have been fine with that, like, being a backup strip for almost eternity. You know, as long as he was able to write, I think he wanted to work on Lara-Su and all of those aspects of the future Mobius that he didn't even touch on because he was too busy world building just the small sphere that he got to.
I mean, from the 25 years later arc that actually did get released, from episodes like 167, 168, and then the Sonic Universe of, I believe it was 25 years later as well. That was like issue 9 to 12 or 11, I think it was.
I think it was 5 to 8 because it was the follow-up to the Shadow
Oh,
Saga,
yeah.
I believe. Yeah, that was 30 years later because
Yeah.
Sonic has kids, woo!
Indeed. The
It doesn't
horror of
matter
it all.
that they died, whatever.
But the thing is, how it was created from that point was actually quite interesting in my opinion. It was like, it didn't dwell on it, and it did seem a little out of place at first because I just came into it randomly. But when I look at it from the universe side of things, the story itself makes a really good like sub story just on the offside, but as I say, it's offside. Should have nothing to do with the main story. This is a sense of a probability.
The problem with anything that foretells the future in any sort of thing that keeps to its own canon is that eventually, if your story goes on that long, it has to hit that point. So, I mean, he's obviously looked either at continuing 25 years later as its own thing continuously so he can continue that thorough story, or he was based on the illusion that he would have been in creative control for the entirety of that length to get the story up to that point and push things towards what he wanted there. without a thing of if he was going to leave or anything else. That's the problem with any sort of forward-thinking ideal, I guess. Like, and you see it in it's something which is really big in TV series is the worst for it, because you see it all the time in that sort of thing, like anything that can foretell the future. And it's a really big. I don't want to say trope, because it's not really a trope, but it's just the ideal of forward thinking and then bringing it back. So I think it's more of an idea that he just wanted to just put in so many things, and I assume that's why when Flint came in, regardless of what happened regarding the court ideal, is why they brought in the whole reset button in the Genesis arc thing, because it just resets everything, including anything that Penders might have put into action that everybody can just refer to.
You mean the reset thing that they've done nearly 3 times now?
Yeah.
Well, to be fair,
that was a half reset and then a big reset.
Right, because the Genesis arc, that reset didn't really change much of anything. It was just we had a fun story where it's almost the game universe, but Sally, Antoine, and Rotor are there hanging out. And then when they did the Mega Man thing, I think if Ian had his way, there's no way that he would have said, "Oh, we're starting from square one." He would have wanted to continue what he was working on with the Mecha Sally stuff and Linda and the Dark Egg Legion and whatever was actually supposed to happen with the
and
echidnas.
Dr. Finitas, I think it's called. I can't pronounce.
Oh yeah, you mean Dr. Zachary? Wait,
Yeah, no, literally, even both the original Sonic the Comic in the UK version, I should say, and Archie. I don't know why, but their obsession with having one echidna being white, who's a psychotic madman / android. I don't know why. I just don't know why.
I think it's to do with what's the word? Begins with an A. Albino. Albinoism.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. It's to make a character so radically different than one you already know that you can just you got to remember that these things are advertised to children, and so it's easier for if you see one character that's red and one character that's white to go, these are really radical characters and they're so different. I don't really know how that would work in Archie, because there are a lot of echidnas in that, aren't there?
All the echidnas virtually are pink, red, or orange. So Finitas is the only white echidna due to an experiment that went horribly wrong /
So again, it's radical differences, so you can really easily point out from a crowd and go, like, it's the same with anyone given a name in a TV series or movie. You know that they're radically different. You know, it's same sort of concept.
Yeah, but I mean, to kind of tie into Dr. Zachary, Dr. Finitas, like it's kind of interesting just to see the way that Ken took the idea of Knuckles and how Nigel Kitching took the idea of Knuckles, because there's a when Nigel was asked, he was like, "Yeah, I didn't want to bring in a bunch of other echidnas because he thought that would ruin the story. Like, here's Knuckles, he's on his own. We're going to focus on that. Introducing Dr. Zachary can add an element, but if Knuckles were to ever find his people, that would be the end, and anything after that point would be boring." And then you see Ken, who's like, as soon as he's able to, which is issues 4 through 6 of the ongoing Knuckles series, he brings back everyone, and then it slowly dissolves into this weird political wannabe thriller that goes off the rails and becomes incredibly boring before it's cancelled.
You mean the Knuckles storyline? Where pretty much it's like you have half the echidnas, which is that stayed on the land to fight, to learn and evolve, and half the colony that actually stayed on the island, which flew into the sky, as quoted from the comics.
But you see, because Ken's idea of how the echidna civilization works doesn't even make sense to me, because they're supposed to be the quote-unquote good guys that are against technology, and then you have
that use technology.
Right, they all use technology. I mean, they're spying on everyone, and even like the citizens have flying cars and all these other things. There's no real difference between the two ideologies, except, they have implants and these guys don't. But these guys say they hate technology completely, and that idea also plays into what he's revealed about the Lara-Su Chronicles, and even the way it's presented there doesn't make any sense because, well, spoiler alert, there's a script segment that he released where Julie Sue goes to the Brotherhood of Guardians, and he's like, she's like, we use technology to save the cities that didn't explode when Mobius exploded because it begins with the planet exploding. Why not? And there's this one echidna who's like, but why would we do that? We hate technology. And it's like, oh, but there's no reason for you to be mad at the fact that you use technology, because she also wants to start space expeditions to find a hospitable planet. And he says, no, we can't do that. It doesn't make sense because technology was what was used to save them, was used in their civilization anyway. And for him to go, no, I'd rather just die in the vacuum of space, makes no sense. And that's just, and meanwhile, Lara-Su is running around with her friends having a foot race because she wants to be Guardian, and her friends saying, yeah, you shouldn't be Guardian, and they're having a fight, and they're having this weird, awkward teenage fight. Meanwhile, they should be going through severe post-traumatic stress disorder because their entire planet just exploded, and almost everyone they know is dead. But, whatever.
Foot race, yay.
Is he still using names like Mobius and that sort of thing? Is he actually got that in the script, even though he's changed the names of nearly everybody else?
Well, I mean, the only name changes are Knuckles, who's because he's the Praetorian, or however you want to pronounce it, but he has an actual name that I forget offhand. That's not Knuckles, but it's clearly Knuckles. Yeah.
It's
and
Knuckles.
then
Knuckles, yeah.
Cuckles, I don't know. and and then whoever is going to be the analog to Sonic and Sally are assumingly going to have different names. And then he teased that the son of Dr. Robotnik is going to be involved in some regard, which is weird to begin with, because Robotnik was supposed to be the centerpiece of his entire saga that was supposed to connect to the Lost Ones, his Image series that was canceled after a single issue, and was featured in the weird Sonic Image crossover that was in the Sonic Super Special. So he had all these ideas, and it was all supposed to tie in together. But yeah, he's still using Mobius, and he's still using the floating island because he says they're not actually connected to Sega Sonic, so the rights are apparently a bit fuzzier, so he doesn't have to worry about that.
Oh god.
I'd say that only really works in the name of Mobius, because that name is really only connected to the comic world, but the floating island has been referenced in canonical games. So
yeah, but his production company is called Floating Island Productions. If you ever watched the Lost Ones, it's right there.
I don't think the idea or name of Floating Island are copyrighted. I think if he tried, he would try and get it, but it's such